JamesAllen.com is the online destination to easily design a customized engagement ring and save up to 50% compared to traditional stores. You pick a diamond, whether it's lab-created or earth-created, James Allen has over 200,000 conflict-free stones. Then you pick your ring setting and metal. And if you need some help, they have real-time diamond consultations available, where an expert can walk you through it all. Get 25% off your order at JamesAllen.com code podcast. That's JamesAllen.com code podcast.
You've discovered your link to GoPowerCat.com's PowerCat podcast. Now, here's your host, GoPowerCat.com publisher, Tim Fitzgerald.
Welcome to another edition of the PowerCat Insiders podcast. We got a little bit of basketball and a little bit of baseball on tap for you today as we divide this sucker right in half. We're going to handle basketball here in the first half with Jay Heidrich and Ryan Gilbert of the Go PowerCat staff. And in the second half, Matt Walters, who is prepping for tonight's women's basketball game, will be joining us briefly to talk about baseball as Kansas State gets a sweep over Western Michigan in their home opening series, and a really nice comeback on Friday night sparked the Wildcats in that comeback. It was impressive. Western Michigan's a pretty good baseball school. We're sponsored by Blue Mark Energy. Does your company or your employer spend $4,000 or more a year on energy bills? Would you like to reduce those costs by 25% or more and maintain the same level of service and reliability? If so, it's time to speak with Blue Mark Energy. Blue Mark Energy, K-State owned and K-State proud. Speaking of energy, guys, K-State had enough to beat Oklahoma on Tuesday and then didn't have enough energy to maintain an inability to score, which seems like a fundamental thing to me when it comes to basketball, ability to score, but they couldn't do it at West Virginia, losing. And I printed out the stats, guys, the wrong ones. Let's see what I got here. 65-43. Now I have two copies of the Oklahoma stats. I'm on top of my game today for this Monday Insiders podcast. Let's go back. Let's not just start with the negative. Let's go back and find the positive. We did this show last Monday, and on Tuesday they lined up with Oklahoma, and Bruce Weber beat Lon Kruger yet again in Bramlage Coliseum. Gills, K-State has improved its defense. There's no denying it. The numbers show it. The numbers prove that K-State is holding opponents to much lower scores, and they found back-to-back games in which they could exceed that number with victories that were 62-57 and 62-54, beating TCU and Oklahoma. But Oklahoma was ranked number 7, probably overranked. But that's a nice win, Gills.
Yeah, and even holding West Virginia on Saturday to 65 isn't terrible. So the game against Oklahoma, man, that was about as energetic as I've felt Bramlage be all year. I mean, Mike McGurl hitting those three threes in a row, it was good. It was great to see that for him, and he definitely he deserves that. And I really do hope he comes back. I know Fran talked about it on the broadcast on Saturday that it's a better option for him to come back, even if he wants to go play overseas a year later. So yeah, I just couldn't be happier for him. And even without, Pack didn't play on Saturday, but then I guess against Oklahoma, he didn't, Pack's been off his game. I think the eye infection, we didn't really know about that until Saturday, but that might be explaining some things with him. It says a lot about McGurl that when someone's down like Pack, he can step up and make those plays. And, Austin Reed's had himself a game for the Sooners, but K-State locked him down. Selton Miguel, phenomenal job, guarding him. So it's a great win. And obviously there's no question Bruce Weber's coming back next year, but if there was any question, I think back-to-back wins pretty much seals that deal.
And Jay, Mike McGurl on senior night, even though they'll have one more home game on Saturday with that reschedule with Iowa State, has probably his best game as a Wildcat, playing 38.5 minutes, 7 of 13 from the field, 5 of 9 from three-point range, 17 points, 7 rebounds, but most importantly, hit 3 3-pointers in succession there late in the game to change it from a likely loss to a possible victory, and K-State held on. It was nice to see Mike have that kind of game.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you expect and hope your senior guard can provide, especially on senior night, to kind of give it a storybook ending with it too, because with a couple minutes left when they got down 5, they weren't playing particularly well. And it looked like this was going to be another, one of these games that they scrap and are in it the whole game, and then towards the end it just gets away from them. And we've seen that movie before. But Mike hit some big shots down the stretch. I was really impressed with Davion Bradford and the times that K-State made efforts to get him the ball. He was just absolutely abusing Brady Manick down low. And treating a veteran Big 12 player like he was a small freshman. Davion Bradford was just getting the ball in the post and saying, "I'm bigger, stronger than you, and get out of my way." And he just took it to the rack every time. It's something that K-State was having a lot of success with, and I'm glad those threes went in because it really solidified that investment that they made to get the ball in the post into Davion and trying to make him a part of the game.
Bradford was also good in the game against West Virginia, and not much was good on that game Saturday in Morgantown, but Bradford kind of rose above the rest with about 11 points, scoring fairly well, but scoring was a problem for K-State throughout the game. So now let's tackle the Nigel Pack question here. Nigel had the eye infection, and Gills, to your point, I think Nigel's just run into the wall. I mean, he's had so much burden on his shoulders this year. When you're a freshman, you eventually find out, man, the season's really long and your legs don't get into your shot. And I think he's just exhausted. So maybe sitting out on Saturday and having this week without a game midweek will help him and the rest of the freshmen be fresh for Iowa State. But, Jay, I'm alarmed that this team can only function if it has its freshman point guard. Just wrap your mind around that. Lacking a freshman point guard, this team is completely, I'm going to say it, inept. I mean, they lost by 20-plus every game when he was out. Even in the first game he was back with Baylor, they set a record for margin of defeat because he wasn't 100%. And he sets this game out, and K-State cannot score. They just can't. They barely broke 40 again, and it's just impossible to watch. But the fact that this program relies so much on a true freshman point guard is troubling. It's just really bad.
Yeah, and it's not so much just his scoring either, and his presence. It's you were forced to put Luke Kazuki in a position where he had to play more minutes than I'm sure the staff probably wanted him to play, and it's part of the frustration I think that a lot of fans have is when everything goes perfectly. It's fun to watch. I mean, you can have some success and you can do that. But when there's any adversity at all, it seems like we just have a hard time getting over it. And when Dean Wade was hurt, we were able to get a couple of wins in the NCAA tournament. But then his senior year when he was hurt, we weren't able to even get a first round win. And so I think part of the problem is that we have a hard time overcoming adversity when it hits on things like that, whether it be a loss of a player or go ahead and get the list. And it seems like there's always something that is causing adversity. So, it's just really frustrating to be so dependent on one player every year and not have any room for error. But hopefully those are things that as a young team you continue to see growth from, because Nigel Pack can't play 40 minutes a game. He can't play every game every year. There's going to be nicks and injuries and things like that. And so they've got to find a way to play basketball and win basketball games without him, and particularly find a way to get some. As bad as K-State's offense is, it's absolutely horrid when he's not in the game as far as the scoring droughts and the inability to get a basket. That was really evident on Saturday. But hopefully that's something that, again, another learning step for this team that they hopefully saw on Saturday.
Gills, They've opened up the 2021 recruiting class, and I was going to get to this later, but this seems like a good place to transition into that. They're full for next year, according to their current scholarship count. They've got 2 open scholarships next year. Mike McGurl, even if he returns, will be a free scholarship, not counting towards the 13 because of the pandemic. And they've got the 1 open that they gave to Petrakis for this season, but that's just a 1-year deal. So they've got a signee and a commitment for those 2 scholarships. You had a story at Go PowerCat that they've opened it back up. They made 2 offers over the weekend, which means they're expecting at least 2 guys on this team to depart. Is going out and signing more guys, true freshmen, available in the spring, going to solve this problem? It's not. These might be good players, but they will be freshmen again, allowing the excuse that we're so young to be played over and over and over.
And we've talked about it time and again on the pod, how, whoever needs to utilize the transfer portal, certainly next season, excuse me, I mean, you got to do that. You can't just keep going after these, high school recruits, no matter how good or bad they may be. Austin Mason and Kittrell Block are the 2 guys that were offered this weekend, both guards. They're 2021 recruits, and it's spring. It's March. I mean, that says a little bit about them. I'm not saying they're bad players, but those are not the guys that you want for, your team for 4 years. You've already got your Landers of the class, and that's your foundation. So yeah, you need to utilize the portal, and, looking at Montavious Murphy, who knows if he'll be back, but then I know Lingard's minutes really haven't been there. I think Rudy Williams is taking a back seat to Nigel Pack at the guard position. And then, Siri Lewis, how happy is he with his minutes? Obviously, I think these guys all, care about the team, but, I think basic math tells you that there will be 3, at least 3 players leaving this team. And people are always talking about how much of an issue that is with Bruce Weber. If you're losing, let's say, Williams, Lingard, and Lewis, it's okay. Those are your bottom players. If you've got Pack and Bradford, that's fine. But I think who you replace them with is more important. I think you've got to get someone that can give you an immediate impact, like someone from the transfer portal. If I had someone, I'd tell you, but just anyone who can make an impact. A freshman in the 2021 cycle, a recruit now that hasn't been signed yet, it's probably not going to make an impact next season. So. Yeah. I get it. You need to look for the future, but next season, if McGurl wants to come back, you got to make it worth his time, right? Give him a chance to make the big dance. Come on.
I agree. Jay, you went to law school, which is a lot like med school. So let me ask you this question. Is Bruce Weber allergic to the transfer portal?
No, he might be. I don't know. Lord knows he might actually be. But it just seems like that hasn't been a focus, or if it hasn't been a focus, they haven't had much success there. And I think that one of the things that you have to look at too, if you're a transfer portal guard, if you're an upperclassman guard, and this is where the big recruiting class and the success of the recruiting class comes back to bite you now long term, is if you're a recruit looking to come in, whether it be a transfer kid or a new signee, I look down the depth chart, and especially if I'm a guard, I'm like, okay, I'm a point guard. Well, I got Nigel Pack there, and Selton Miguel's played a lot of time at point, and they got Rudy Williams there as well too, and then they got Mike McGurl coming back. All right, let's look at the shooting guard status. Okay, well, I got Mike McGurl there. We've got Deshaun Gordon. I've got Rudy Williams again and Selton Miguel at that spot. And you go down the list, and it's just stacked at every position with freshmen and sophomores. And so you're looking at it like, I can come here and maybe I can battle and get a spot, or is there another program where I can go and walk in and play 35 minutes a game? If you're a transfer and you got 1 year to play, you're probably not going to go to a school that has 3 people at your position that have played significant minutes, and that's where this works against him in this regard. And if you're saying for 3 years in a row that you've been young, then youth isn't the problem.
Yeah.
After a while, you shouldn't be young anymore.
It just alarms me how the we're young excuse gets used over and over. I am buying it this year. They are young. The pandemic has had a role, but I think we all expected better than this. Saturday, they are going to get that Iowa State game made up, Gills. They kind of put this game off to the very last. This was the last game they were going to make up, to be blunt. They wanted to make sure all the games that could be made up with regards to teams needing postseason wins or wins to get into the postseason, those were first. So that meant any game with K-State, TCU, or Iowa State was going to get rescheduled. Well, they finally got Iowa State all made up, and lo and behold, they set that game for Saturday. This is a good opportunity. The team won 3 games last year. I'm not clinging to moral victories here, but I think it would say something that they won 4 games this year, considering that last year they had better players. On paper, they were better than this team. They had Xavier Sneed, Cartier Jada, 2 guys that are oodles above most of this roster, but they were so damaged flawed as a team that they couldn't win more than 3 games. At least 4 games gives him something to say I improved. It doesn't mean I'm accepting it, but it is true. And it would be a little surprising if they won 3 of their last 4 to get to that. I think that is pretty much undeniable progress.
And even 4 of the last 5, I guess it'd be 6 if you win that game against TCU and you drop the next game. But yeah, they're playing well now. And you look back at last season, you said, that was immediately after a Big 12 championship. So how you win 3 games after that it's just baffling. But if this young team with all the injuries and the COVID and how young they are, that would be seriously that's amazing when you think about it. That this team could win more games than a team quote unquote led by Cartier Jada and Xavier Sneed and those guys. So Iowa State's playing okay. I know they played Baylor tough, and obviously it's no question that Baylor's, and people don't want to make COVID an excuse, but look at what COVID's done to Baylor. It takes a toll on your team when you can't practice. There's kind of 2 types of COVID pauses. If it's your pause, then you're kind of in trouble. If it's someone else's pause, you're gaining from that and you're getting that rest and you can still practice. So, Iowa State's they're still a Power 5 school. Obviously it's been a tough year for them, but should be a fun game. And obviously we saw it last year with K-State when McAtee went off on senior day against Iowa State. It's an evenly matched game, and it should be a fun one just to watch K-State really play to someone that they're pretty evenly matched with. Because let's be real here, we haven't seen that much this season.
Jay, you're the athletic director. So congratulations. I've given you a med degree and made you an athletic director in the same podcast. You're the athletic director. Your basketball coach has won 3 and 4 games in back-to-back years in a conference that plays 18 in a season. You've accepted that as a rebuild. But year 3 of that rebuild, what is a realistic and, just what this program needs in terms of a win total in the conference? Out of 18 games, you would say they need to win what?
I think they have to go at least 9-9 next year, and preferably win a game in the tournament. And I would make that a pretty hard line to draw. Normally, when I look at teams, what I like to look at is, how are you playing? How is this something that you're moving forward on? What's the team look like? And but I think it's a hard line next year, because if let's say they win against Iowa State, they finish the year with 4 wins, and then next year they win 6 or 7 games. People are going to say, well, they're still improving. That's better. And you're stuck in this kind of basketball purgatory world, right? Where, yes, it's getting better, but when it starts so low, it's still bad, right? It's kind of like the COVID numbers. Everyone says, well, we're so good right now. Yeah, we're not getting, 5,000 deaths a day, but is it still good? And so it's kind of the same thing where it's better, but does that mean it's still good? And I think that's where you have to look at that. And one of the other things that I look at it from is not necessarily in a vacuum. With this team, that it's young, and those factors. I look at it like next year 10 of your program. Is this where you expect your program to be in year 10? And taking all those things into consideration. I think that's how you have to look at it as well, not just in specifics to this team, but in regards to where are you as a program, and this is where you expect to be year 10, and still within recent success recent years of the success that you have had.
I agree with you. I mean, I've said it over and over. Is it too much to ask for your basketball program to be average in the conference in which they play? And that's 9-9. Can you get there? You added in the tournament win. I'm going to be more specific. Tournament win in the field of 64. Yes. Because we've seen this game played before. The first four is designed exactly for guys like Bruce Weber. That's why the coaches want that. They want those two bubble coaches that sneak into the tournament to have the opportunity to say, A, they made the tournament, even though in a world where 64 teams should be the tournament, they wouldn't have. And they got to win, maybe. And that's what Bruce Weber did like 5 years ago. Got the win over Wake, then went and got smoked by Cincinnati. Probably should have been the end, but he lost his AD and everything kind of saved him at that point. And then the Elite Eight, Big 12 tournament, here we are.
And I think one of the things, Gil's just mentioned that it's unquestioned that Bruce Weber's coming back this year. And I think that's probably true. But I think one of the unknowns is what happens if he loses 3 or 4 guys. And it will obviously depend on who those guys are. But I think that if you're Gene Taylor, you have to look at it. You have to say also, yeah, you finished the year well. It started horrendously. You did improve. You did get better, because they have. I think even the sharpest critic of Bruce Weber would have to admit that. And if they don't, then they're not worth listening to. But they have gotten better. But if your line is that we're playing for the future and you lose a third of your roster that's playing for the future, then what's that future look like? I think if you're Gene, then you have to really take a look at it and say, I just don't see it happening, with losing 6 or 7 guys last year, losing 3 or 4 this year. You basically turned over your entire team in 2 years. And I think that's one factor that Gene should, and I'm sure will, look into as the season comes to an end as well.
Well, it is going to be very intriguing to see how this team can finish out here with Iowa State coming in on Saturday. And then that first round game of the Big 12 tournament is set for the Cats. They will be the 9th seed. TCU rallied to beat Iowa State to guarantee themselves the 8th seed. Not that it would have mattered. They are going to be the 8-9 game. All that mattered was the seeding and the uniform color at this point. 3,000 fans roughly will be allowed into the Sprint Center. T-Mobile Center in Kansas City. And I'll be curious to see with Iowa State playing in the first day and Kansas State playing in the first day, both teams not having a great year. Will they sell out the Sprint Center? Dang it, did it again. T-Mobile Center. It just doesn't work for me, guys. Sprint Center was so nice. Gills, I don't know if they'll be able to sell that out, but it's beginning to look like this. There's a good possibility if K-State can beat TCU, they'll get another date with KU, and it always works that way. Why? It'd be kind of symbolic that KU would get to finish off K-State's season, even if they went on a little burst here, but we'll find out. Lots of basketball to be played this week. It's going to be an intriguing week as some teams play 3 games, and Kansas, meanwhile, is completely done and scheduled a barn burner this week with UTEP. The Miners are coming to Lawrence. It should sell out Allen Fieldhouse as KU knocks off Baylor. Let's touch on that real quick. How much value, Jay, do you put in, and Gills, I want your opinion on this too, Kansas beating Baylor on Saturday, Baylor coming off the COVID where they struggled against Iowa State. They didn't look themselves, but, man, Kansas did look good.
I mean, it just goes to show how good of a coach Bill Self is, right? I mean, he is fitted Scott Drew with the clown suit time and time again at Allen Fieldhouse. I mean, there's been other years where Baylor is probably the more talented team coming into Allen Fieldhouse, and it just seems like Bill Self every year finds a way to win that game. Because you put those two teams on paper, they are not even remotely close as far as talent and ability. If you go position by position, I mean, in K-State or in K-State, KU just outplayed them. And Baylor's been off, and we can talk about that too. But I'm not so sure that that wouldn't happen regardless, because KU's just playing really well right now. They're hitting some shots more. They're defending better. And it's amazing when you make shots how that is just contagious energy for every other aspect of the game.
And Gills, when David McCormick's that good, KU's pretty good.
Mm-hmm. And real quick, Fitz, wouldn't K-State play Baylor if they were to win the Big 12 tournament? Because they'd be the one.
Oh, you're correct. You are correct. Oh, good news. They'll play Baylor. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, you're right. The 7-10 game would play the 2 seed, not the 8-9. Good point.
Well, you're used to KU just being the 1 seed, so that's where it got messed up. But, yeah, I mean, McCormick's been big in KU. I was skeptical about their little, spurt they've had as of late. 2 of those wins were to Iowa State and 1 was to K-State. So I took it with a grain of salt. But that game against Baylor, and I know I touched on their COVID issues, but that was a heck of a win for Kansas. And last I checked, I think Marcus Garrett's their 5th leading scorer. So if you were to tell me that at the beginning of the season, I would say that's not good. KU's not going to be good, but he's a solid defender. He's exceptional at defending. And Abaji's starting to hit shots, like you said. McCormick, Christian Brown, when he hits the shots, KU seems to win. So they're clicking at the right time, and this is no surprise to me at all. It happens every year in the Big 12, where KU loses a few games and everyone writes them off. And Bill Self, like you said, Jay, is just a heck of a coach, whether you love him or hate him. His teams get better as the season goes on. He
really is. And like a prize fighter that's been knocked to the mat and knocked out a few times, the best way maybe to get your confidence back is to line up a few guys you can beat. That's what Kansas had in that schedule with those 3 games, as Gills mentioned, 2 with Iowa State, 1 with Kansas State. Sometimes when you can't find your punches, you need a Chuck Wepner to bleed for you. And that's exactly what KU's done. And they seem to have their confidence back, their swagger back, and we'll see if it carries them very far in the NCAA tournament. Well, that will do it for the first half of the PowerCat Insiders podcast. We are doing this in 2 halves today, and on the other side of the break, we will have Matt Walters to talk about Kansas State baseball. The Wildcats are 5-2 on the season now as they stay home coming up this weekend. More beautiful weather expected to play Eastern Illinois. Matt Walters is standing by on the PowerCat Insiders podcast.
The PowerCat podcast will be right back.
Imagine the softest sheets you've ever felt. Now imagine them getting even softer over time. I'm here to tell you about Boll & Branch sheets. In a recent customer survey, 96% replied that Boll & Branch sheets get softer with every wash. They're made from the rarest organic cotton and designed to get even softer over time. Try their sheets with a 30-night guarantee plus 15% off your first order with code Odyssey. So head to BOLLandbranch.com today. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/247 and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Must be 21 plus and present in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, permitted parishes only, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, or Wyoming. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700, or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York, or visit oasas.ny.gov/gambling. Standard text messaging rates apply. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Utah, and other states where prohibited.
We now send it back to the PowerCat podcast.
Welcome back to the PowerCat Insiders Podcast. We appreciate Jay Heidrich and Ryan Gilbert talking K-State basketball in the first half. We turn our attention in the second half to Kansas State baseball that is coming off a 3-0 homestand or home series with Western Michigan as the Wildcats move to 5-2 on the season. Matt Walters is joining us, but we are sponsored by Blue Mark Energy. It's a natural gas products and services provider serving feed yards, hospitals, hotels, manufacturers, and school districts throughout the Midwest. And Blue Mark Energy is the natural gas provider for the Kansas State campuses in Manhattan and Salina. Blue Mark Energy, K-State owned and K-State proud. Welcome, Matt Walters. You're a busy, busy man. Little women's basketball tonight for the Wildcats, but you're here to discuss baseball, at least initially. Boy, did this series with Western Michigan, which is a really good offensive program, get off to a rocky start with your ace, Jordan Wicks. I don't want to say get knocked around, but he uncharacteristically gave up 4 earned runs over 6 innings. And yet Kansas State found a way to win that game, the first game of the series at Tointon Family Stadium, 9-8, as they scored 5 in the bottom of the 8th. They won that one by the hair on their chin, but that is a good sign that they can put together that kind of rally.
Yeah, exactly. And I tell you, Western Michigan deserves a lot of credit. That's a very good baseball team, and some will say they're picked to finish 6th in the MAC this year. The MAC's not a very good baseball conference. It's better than you think. And Western Michigan has some veteran older guys, and they're a very good offensive team. They're a very good offensive team. And simply stated, Jordan Wicks wasn't at his best, and Western Michigan hit his mistakes. And K-State did not take very good, mature at-bats for the better part of 7 innings, and then in the 8th they did. There were a couple of key walks. Western Michigan's bullpen faltered. K-State took advantage, and the Wildcats win that one. If you'd have told me going into this series that K-State would win a pair of 1-run games in that series, I would not have bought it. I would take it, but I would not have bought it. But that's a good sign, and the 8-game homestand overall is off to a good start. Western Michigan's better than who K-State will see this coming weekend in Eastern Illinois. South Dakota State split with K-State a year ago, and they're in town a week from this Tuesday. That K-State will play them next Tuesday and Wednesday before going down to Houston. But very, very good series win, and that's another positive step for the team in the program.
Now I know that Pete Hughes is trying to develop this team into being one that is even better in the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, which is a trait of all good teams. And that is something you learn. You just don't happen to have that. So this was a really good step to see them find a way to win 2 of these games. They won on Sunday 2-1. The middle game on Saturday was a bit more of a blowout in K-State's favor. But if you can win those close games, which they didn't particularly do in that opening series, those 4 games set down in Arizona, you will be in much better shape. And as he's pointed out, you get to Big 12 play, you're going to have a lot of close games in which you're going to be decided maybe in your last at bat. So positive step.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, what I said going into the series, Fitz, and it's not always happened, I've just seen enough of it, is, Kansas State split the 4 games down in Arizona. Very easily could have been 3-1. K-State, as Pete Hughes says, we're not in it for moral victories anymore. So they go 2-2, and in this 8-game homestand, if you're going to go or you want to go in this 8-game set, you really, at most, you can lose 1 game. You have to pick up wins now. And then when you go to Houston, you're going to play Northern Illinois twice and Rice twice. Rice is not what Rice used to be. You have to have a successful non-conference season. But then, again, you do as well in the Big 12. Now, the Big 12 is loaded this year. And what you said is exactly right. There are going to be plenty of close games in the Big 12 because there's lots and lots of very good pitching. K-State's got more of that. One other thing to keep in mind with this team is when you think about the weekend rotation, Wicks is a veteran, has pitched quite a bit so far. Seymour and McCullough really are still pretty new to the Division I ball game, the Division I ranks. So they're just scratching the surface. K-State can say the same thing at shortstop, at second base. They've got a great new second baseman in Nick Goodwin, who's off to a hot start as a freshman. But there are a lot of guys that are still just getting their toes wet in Division I baseball, and it's going to take some time.
It will indeed. I mean, this is an improved pitching staff, and I would guess that you were encouraged by the ability of the bullpen to come in after Wicks and get that game shut down and at least put them in a position to win, which is always a good sign.
Yeah, because on Sunday, Tyler Ekberg has been the closer. He came in early on in that ball game Sunday because K-State needed to get some critical outs, and Ekberg winds up throwing an inning in 2/3. So, he comes in the 6th. He does an excellent job. And then, what also stands out is that K-State got the double play ball to finish up the 8th and then finish up the ball game. And that was with Caleb Littlegym getting the 6-out save, his first as a Wildcat. And, again, positive step in that the bullpen did its job because the bullpen didn't do its job out in Arizona. And what you try to do now here in what was late February and what is now early March is you're trying to see what guys can fill what roles. You start to develop that trust factor. This guy's only going to, be able to maybe face 5 or 6 guys, or this guy's going to be able to go 3 or 4 innings in middle relief if the starter gets in trouble. That's what you're trying to get figured out right now for when you get the conference play. Then your game plan, your rotations, your, this guy in this situation, that guy in that situation, and so forth, that for the most part is resolved when you get to conference play near the end of the month.
Nick Goodwin, you want to see a breakout start, freshman, second baseman, interior infielder. He might slide over to shortstop some. He came in as a shortstop. He's hitting, 360 right now? Picking up some big hits, had the home run on Friday night. Boy, this kid has really been something else so far, hasn't he?
Yep, leads the team in RBIs. He's got a couple of home runs as well. He's out of St. Thomas Aquinas. My guess is you'll likely see him just stay at second base, maybe DH once in a while. But the game's not going too fast for him right now. He got both of those double plays started in the 8th and 9th yesterday against Western Michigan. Talented kid. The spotlight, at least as of now, is not too big for him. And remember, he didn't play his final year of high school ball because of COVID. So the fact that he has stepped in and doing what he's doing is a good sign. It's great. A tip of the cap to the kid for having such a strong start. It is a long season. It's like, in basketball, we talk about the grind that the guys run into and the wall that they hit come, early to mid-February. Same thing happens in baseball, but you always experience the highs and lows. But this is a fun kid to watch, and the fans are really going to like him.
Matt, I'm really intrigued by this baseball team. I think it could be really fun. And so far at Tointon Stadium, I know attendance has been limited. They might get a boost to that from the county here pretty soon. But people seem to be showing up. It's really encouraging that people seem to be rallying behind baseball. What does K-State have coming up here at home that fans might be able to sneak in to see a game?
3 this weekend with Eastern Illinois, and then 2 with South Dakota State, a couple of midweek games next week. The Cats' March schedule is a little, I'll say a little light in terms of home games because, again, the weather's a little funky, a little awkward. Kansas State only has one of their series at home in March after South Dakota State, and Fitz, it is one I would tell people to come watch. It's New Mexico. It is a team that K-State lost to down in Arizona. It's a team that K-State led, but let that lead get away. They are a better ball club and program than people recognize or realize. They have a tendency to hit a lot of home runs because of the thin air they play in, but they are a good baseball team with a veteran and very successful head coach. And the great thing, at least to me, is when the schedule turns to April, K-State's really at home all month, minus a 3-game series in Texas. So April is the month that you're really going to want to get out and watch this club. But that New Mexico series, March 19th, 20th, and 21st, will be a good one as well.
Yeah, it's a really intriguing schedule here over the next month or so, as they do go down to Houston, play Northern Illinois and Rice, which is always a great program. Then that set with New Mexico really kind of ushers in the teeth of the schedule. They'll go to Wichita State, they go to Oklahoma State, and then they come home for Texas Tech. This conference got off to a bad start with their series that 3 teams played against 3 teams from the SEC. It didn't go so well for the Big 12, but this conference is really good, particularly when it comes to pitching.
Yeah, you probably can give the SEC the upper hand right now, but the Big 12 is right there with that conference, from Texas Tech to TCU to Oklahoma State to Oklahoma. West Virginia is going to be very good this year. There's going to be, I may be mistaken, but I don't know that there are going to be a lot of sweeps this year in the Big 12. I think there's going to be a lot of 2-1 series. And Fitz, this is what COVID has done, has created bigger rosters and created more depth for every team, from Kansas State to everybody else in the Big 12. And in some ways, I think that's going to pay dividends down the road. But the Big 12 is just so good every year, and there's some teams that can really swing it. I can't wait, but you're right that when New Mexico comes to town, or for that matter, when K-State plays Rice in Houston here in a couple of weeks, K-State really gets into the meat of the schedule. They're playing a few less games than years past, and after next week, you've got Arkansas Pine Bluff that comes to town for 2, Northern Colorado for 2 in April, Texas Southern for 3. But other than that, it's some really good non-cons, and then obviously all Big 12 the rest of the way.
Let's turn our attention to women's basketball. You've got a game tonight at Bramlage Coliseum. TCU comes in. Wednesday, West Virginia comes in. And then they go to OU on Sunday as they play 3 games this week as they try to make up a little bit of ground for the games they missed earlier this season. Kansas State did pick up its second Big 12 win of the season against Texas Tech a week ago. What are you seeing from the women's program right now, Matt?
4 games in 8 days, which is tough. TCU is a very winnable game. K-State had the Horned Frogs where they wanted them down in Fort Worth, let it get away. TCU hit a bucket load of threes in that game. I like the matchup, but K-State has just had so many inconsistencies offensively. It's been difficult, and foul trouble has really plagued Aoka Lee. And in the game Saturday at Baylor, it also played Chrissy Carr. But again, you're talking about Baylor. You'd like to have 10 on 5 when you're playing Baylor to have a chance. But, the West Virginia game on Wednesday night is another one, Fitz, that K-State played one of its best Big 12 games of the year in Morgantown and just couldn't finish it. And there were some calls down the stretch that went against K-State. But K-State also – they lost that game because of self-inflicted wounds. K-State has not handled pressure well. They're struggling handling the basketball, averaging 18 turnovers a game. in conference play, and it's just hard to survive with that. So when Kansas State is hitting some threes and they're getting the ball to Aoki when they need to and when they should and how they should, they're doing all right. But there's not been enough of that. And, we'll see how they finish. You mentioned 2 home games and then the road trip to Oklahoma, and Oklahoma's another one that Kansas State should have won, but shoulda, woulda, coulda, doesn't feed the Bulldogs. They lost that game, and K-State's got to defend the 3 in that one. They've got to stick with Taylor Robertson, the former McPherson standout, and I think a lot of teams are just tired right now. You can talk men's or women's. I think teams are tired, and some are coming off COVID still, and it's just odd. But for the K-State women, their margin for error is slim, and they've got to do a lot of things right if they're going to win, be it 1, be it 2, be it all 3 games this week.
To bring it back around to baseball, in a incredibly frustrating basketball season, whether it's men's or women's or combined, hasn't gone the way that any of us thought it would. Baseball is a shining light, and I'm intrigued to see what this Wildcat team does, and I think Coach Hughes is a perfect fit for Kansas State. I think his fans, it sucked that last season mostly got wiped out. They didn't get to be around him as much, but as they get more and more exposure to him, as they get good and they start showing up to the ballpark, they're going to like this dude a lot, aren't they?
Totally agree. He's a character. He's a good man. He's got great people around him. When you talk about the staff, it fits the biggest jump so far has just been in recruiting. But I totally agree. I think Coach is a very good fit for this program and this town. And again, it takes a little bit of time. When Coach Hughes got hired, the program had made plenty of strides. Unfortunately, in the last couple of years of Brad Hill, it had taken a couple of steps backwards. But the key with whatever the sport is recruiting, and you've got to get the Jacks and the Joes, and K-State's got more of them, and Coach and his staff have great recruiting ties. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And for the fans' sake, I hope that baseball is that shining light, and the calendar 2021 sports season, ends on a higher note. I think the baseball team's got a chance to have great success this spring, and knock on wood, if they can stay healthy and not have, one of those catastrophic or key injuries, this is a team that could be in the NCAA tournament. They could reach the postseason. They might finish 5th or 6th. They could still very easily be in the NCAA tournament.
I'm intrigued by baseball as a college sport because it has been very popular in some corners, most notably where it's warm, and the SEC is really good. But now with what's happened with COVID, it's backed the talent pool up a little bit. There wasn't a very deep draft last year. They went 5 rounds in the Major League Draft. So a lot of guys came back that probably would have been drafted a little bit later than that, but would have had an opportunity to go to minor league ball. There was no minor league ball last year. And now they've eliminated a lot of minor league franchises and tightened up that whole level of play, meaning fewer jobs, probably guys will stay in college longer. Matt, college baseball could really go through a renaissance over the next 5 years or so.
I don't think there's any question about that. And what's always bothered me about the system is all of those young kids that leave, when they leave high school and they forego college and they go to professional baseball, and then you never, ever hear of them again, whether they get hurt or whether they get disenfranchised or disenchanted or they suffer an injury and they're not able to play. There's a very good brand of baseball, and there always has been at the collegiate level. And for that sake, I'm glad that some of the changes that have taken place have indeed done that, because there's nothing like a great college game and an atmosphere like Manhattan when there's 2,500 tops 3,000 when you've got people stuffed in every corner. And it takes me back, Fitz, to we talk about Rice in case they play in there here in less than 2 weeks. it takes me back to when K-State went to its first regional, and it was at Rice a few years ago, and just what that experience was like, and the fact that K-State won the Saturday night game against Rice and was a win away from going to LSU in a super regional. It also takes me back to when K-State was one run away from going to the College World Series for the first time. And in all the years, Fitzy, of covering K-State sports, there have only been a handful of times where I've ever been as nervous calling a game as those two situations, those two nights. And that's on my bucket list is I pray to the good man upstairs that somehow, some way, I get to call a K-State baseball game at the College World Series before it's all said and done. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I love Pete Hughes, and our goal is to get to Omahattan, or they call it Omahattan, and our goal is to get to Omaha. I love the feeling around the ballpark, the ball club, and I say ballpark, folks. We've got a diamond here in Manhattan in Toyota Family Stadium. It's slick. Every seat in the bowl is chair back. Video board, sound system. It looks like a big time ballpark now.
Well, it does. It's really impressive, and hopefully we'll see the county open up more attendance because there was a demand for tickets this weekend, which is a very good sign for K-State baseball. Matt, I appreciate it. I know you got a lot on your plate. I appreciate you taking time. This has been the PowerCat Insiders Podcast, sponsored by Blue Mark Energy. We will be back with more talk about your Wildcats next week. It might be our season wrap as we end up here with college baseball heading into their season, but basketball wrapping up their seasons. But we will continue to talk a lot about K-State baseball on our PowerCat podcast.
PowerCat Podcast. All rights reserved. GoPowerCat.com and Spirit Street Publishing.
With BlueLink Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading BlueLink Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.